live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime, not just a tagline we deliver day in, day out, as you're about to see. So we are circling back to a disturbing story which took place in Oklahoma involving the murder of two mothers. And those two mothers were Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley. They disappeared in the panhandle of Oklahoma back on March 30th of last year while they were going to pick up Veronica Butler's two children. She was sharing custody with a guy named Wrangler Rickman, who will come into play in this. And she was going to get the kids for a birthday party. They never returned. Tiffany Adams, Granny Adams, you'll hear her name a lot. She is these two young children's grandmother. She was, as I said, in a bitter custody dispute. She had the custody with Veronica Butler. The son, this guy Wrangler Rickman, was in jail at the time of the murders, I believe. And Veronica Butler was only allowed supervised visits with children on Saturdays. Now, Jilian Kelley, who is husband is a pastor in Kansas. She's a member of this church community in Kansas. She went with her. She voluntarily went with her to help out during the custody visit. She was authorized to do so. And then the two women were discovered dead on April 13th, about 13 days after the fact. 5 suspects in custody. 2 of them, it appears, are turning state's witness. We're going to dig into it all. Best guest tonight, coming to us from what I understand is a snowy Oklahoma, is Dr. Michaela Sarah Mosing. She is the owner of the largest Oklahoma-owned private investigation and process serving company. She is a licensed process server, a private investigator, a notary public. She's also licensed as a teacher, a principal, a superintendent, and is an ardent advocate of civil rights for the oppressed. And she's been on with us about this story before. And then we've got John Tompkins. He was on with us about Delphi. He's in Indianapolis, a criminal defense attorney, very formidable. And he was doing analysis for Fox 59 during the Delphi trial, which is how we got to know him. And last, and certainly not least, the crowd favorite, Dr. Roger Rose.
Yeehaw!
Private therapist. Need that levity tonight. Private therapist in Greenville, South Carolina. And he also works with inmates, so he's well aware of the criminal mind. And he is originally from Oklahoma.
Yeah, born and bred Okie, right here.
There you go.
Hey, Oklahoma born and bred. Oklahoma.
Now the COE is going to be loading some elements into the show, but just again to just set the table, and then we'll dig into these different aspects. We've got the autopsy report, which I'm about to go over, and then possible key witnesses and a motive in this crime. We know it's a custody battle, but there are a little more specifics revealed during court testimony. The two women, again, Veronica Butler, Jilian Kelley. The suspects here, Grandma Tiffany Adams, 54, Tad Burt Collum, 43. He looks like he's 183, but he is 43, and he is the boyfriend of Grandma Tiffany. Then you've got Cole Earl Twombly, married to Cora Twombly. She made a deal with the state, which we'll get to, as did Paul Grice, the 5th defendant in this case. Apparently, he's back in court on February 19th, and there's some court dates coming up in the very near future. The charges here, John Tompkins: first-degree murder, kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder in connection with the deaths of Butler and Kelley, and then it goes on beyond that for Grandma Adams, who faces additional charges. The what were they thinking questions for Dr. Rhodes, the what now for these defendants and the victims' families, more importantly, what now?
Well, you know.
Well, Raj, that was for John. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Run at it.
Well, now that we've seen the prosecutor start to get cooperators to come over, we know that there have been talks going on. We know usually the prosecutors are talking to the families of the victims before they'll offer any deal to any of the co-conspirators or participants. Mr. Grice, I believe, is one of the people who actually stabbed, and his clothes were found in the burial site. That's a little bit surprising that he would turn into a cooperator, or more precisely, that the state would want to offer him something. They usually look for the least culpable to give deals to, and frankly, most families want the least culpable to get the deals. So there may be something there in needing a precise piece of information that only he has, and it's a very important piece of information. That's what that says to me. But for the families and going forward, they're going to see the culpability really differentiated between these 5 co-defendants, because the state has to explain, why are we showing this person some grace and not that person? Why is their contribution so important, or why is their role the one that we're going to be more forgiving of?
Yeah, well put. And I want to come to you about how you handle multiple defendants. Before I get back to Raj, Dr. Sam Rosing, what I mean, obviously it's snowing tonight in Oklahoma, but what is how's the case reverberated, I guess, since we last spoke? Is it more low profile now? Are people still talking about it? It appears that 3 of the 5 will go to trial. Sort of what's the latest temperature, no pun intended, there as it regards this case?
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a lower profile here, but that's only in part because they have 5 suspects arrested and 2 who are already making deals. The interesting thing will really be the others who have a lot to lose, who are probably the most culpable, especially the grandmother, whom I believe was the mastermind of this entire thing, really, of this whole child custody dispute. And now the poor child doesn't have a mother, a grandma. I mean, it's a whole mess. But I think that it's going to start to pick back up, especially if it goes to trial. Because they are facing the death penalty. And it's kind of like the Brian Koberger case. I mean, he has a lot to gain by trying, the ones who are facing the death penalty, by trying to delay it out and get this pushed back. Because if they are convicted of capital murder, let's say, then that gives them extra years and it buys them more time. And that's exactly what their defense attorneys will do. I mean, they're going to try to get it kicked out or a deal without the death penalty, something like that. But at the very least, it's going to do that, and that's going to be interesting to watch.
Thank you for that. Thank you to everyone who hung out with us last night. We did a little fundraiser for the LA fires going on. I believe there's 5 or 6 still raging, 0 containment on them. And the winds are supposed to pick up again tonight. There's supposed to be a little lull over the weekend, and then it's supposed to get pretty bad again early next week. So we could be literally, hopefully not, but seeing a replay of this. So in the show last night, we're donating all the super chats to the Los Angeles Fire Department Foundation and COE. Please make sure we have the link there in the show summary from last night. People are still asking how to donate, and then you'll be able to click on that link. Obviously, you're welcome to donate to whomever you'd like out there, but this is an organization that we know is legit, and we had the president, the head of it, on last night with us, but she was obviously dealing with all the craziness of the current situation. Dr. Roger Rhodes, we had you on for the Adelsons. They are accused and one convicted of killing Dan Markel in a custody battle. We're now doing Shanna Gardner in Jacksonville. She had someone put a tire in front of her in the middle of a road. Her ex-husband gets out. He gets shot to death. Murder for hire. She could face the death penalty. You have this woman, Corey Richins, in the Salt Lake City, Utah area. She poisons her husband 5 times the lethal dose, and then has the chutzpah to write a book about grieving over your husband. What the hell is the matter with these people, Raj? I ask you the question every time. Is it a common denominator, or is each craziness individually reserved for each person?
Well, the one thing they all have in common is I didn't do it. You know that, and the next thing they have in common is I'm smarter than anybody who says I did. And the last one is I'm so in love with me. How could anybody claim I did anything negative? So you have narcissism, you have sociopathy, you have ignorance. So all that mixed together, it's the common denominator that you see in all those stories. You know, they all say, if you, here's the thought, Joel, if they saw it the way I saw it, or that I see it, then they would certainly understand that I'm innocent. Yeah. And don't bother me with the facts.
Yeah. That appears to be what happens often. Tennis Girl 101 getting ahead of me, but I like the question. Does nasty Granny Tiffany, by the way, she spells it with 1 F, which is interesting. Never know why. Then you have to go through life going, it's Tiffany with 1 F. So it's kind of a cruel trick or joke by your parents.
It's important to be different. See, if I see myself as different, I have to present myself as different. And in that world, the 1 F Tiffany, you know, that's different.
Maybe that Ned Smith says maybe 2 Fs cost more. You just don't know. Maybe that was the psychological factor. We don't know. But John Tompkins, to you, this Grandma Tiffany did waive her right to a preliminary hearing and a speedy trial. Does this mean she's the mastermind of this? And we'll get into some of the testimony. But does this mean she's working a plea deal, or she's just sitting her ass down and waiting, giving herself some time?
Well, she's giving herself some time. Time is definitely on her side for several reasons. If she is going to try to mount a significant defense, or if she's going to try to get ready for these flips, she needs time to do that. If she is, the other thing can be that, you know, this waiving the speedy trial right is the attorney's call, and he can, whoever that attorney is, may be advising them, we need more time to investigate. If she is asserting that she's not the mastermind, and they need, for instance, significant digital evidence, phone records, Facebook, social media, that can take a significant amount of time to gather, and a speedy trial that eliminates your attorney's ability to prepare properly is not a right worth keeping.
Interesting. And I'm wondering, you know, but I personally cannot imagine. I mean, Michaela, to you, do you see any scenario where somehow Granny Adams cuts a deal with the state? I mean, maybe just to avoid the death penalty. I can't see anything else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the only reason that I could see her doing that. But if it's going to happen, I believe it'll be at the very last second, and that's only if they offer it to her. And in a crime this gruesome, and this calculated, and just mean and terrible, they may not offer that. If they're just going to pursue the death penalty. And if they are going to pursue that and she truly has nothing to lose, then she'll absolutely take it to trial because she has nothing to lose. Plus, as I said earlier, if she is going to face the death penalty, then it benefits her to push it back as far as she can, because she is buying herself extra time in the event that she loses and she gets the death penalty. She has those extra couple of years to live her life.
Yeah. It's about buying time, I believe, not about a deal. Just to get back to the original question there. Trigger warning, about to discuss the autopsy findings. These came out a little while ago, but again, we are circling back to the case now. So if you don't want to hear it, I would suggest dropping out for a couple minutes. But John, to you, as far as Veronica Butler, she is the mother of these two minor children, ages 6 and 8. The cause of death was not known for a very long time. Then it was obviously released by the medical examiner. Multiple sharp force trauma. The injuries here, that was the cause of death. Multiple sharp force trauma. The injuries, 30 sharp force injuries, 9 stab wounds, 21 deep cuts. The locations of them are head, neck, other parts of the body, 10 defensive injuries, defensive wounds, indicating that she was trying to fight back. Her right hand had multiple slices from grabbing the knife blade. She also had a blunt force laceration to the back of the head, and both women were found with stun gun marks. Now, when that is revealed to a jury, is it game over? What do you do as a defense attorney with this sort of evidence in a medical examiner's report?
Sure. Well, I currently have an active murder case with 34 stab wounds, 19 significant, and several superficial. And so I can say with certainty, the first thing you do, there are rules about too much gruesome evidence, and you would overwhelm a juror. It would be unfair to show every single photograph. Now, the problem for the defense becomes, as a rule of thumb, the state is allowed to show each wound. So can they show a picture of each wound individually, or should they be limited to showing 5 pictures that depict every wound within those 5 pictures? So you really have a problem with, are you going to make the jury, and to answer your question, that overwhelm the jury, is it game over? That's what you're trying to avoid in limiting too many gruesome photos. In the end, what you do, there are a lot of gruesome photos that are going to come in, and you start talking to the jury about that during jury selection. Is anybody queasy around blood? Is there anybody who might pass out or faint or not be able to pay attention because they'd be overwhelmed? Well, that juror doesn't get to serve.
This isn't. Oh yeah. So this is in. I'm sorry. This is in the voir dire process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So if a juror says, I pass out when I see a pinprick of my own blood, well, so you're telling me you wouldn't be able to concentrate on the evidence if you have a big picture of blood right in front of you? Well, no, I don't think I could. I'd be overwhelmed. That juror's going to get excused, and more importantly, excused for cause, meaning it doesn't count as one of the strikes, one of the limited number of strikes that the defense has to use. If a juror says, for whatever reason, I would not be able to properly consider the evidence, they don't get to serve on the jury. So it's multifaceted in the ways that can impact. Ultimately, multiple gruesome pictures are going to come in of 2 different victims, not just one. So they're going to get 2 different victims. And you have to pick the right jury that can tolerate it, and then just make it commonplace. Whatever's coming in, by the time you fought your battle about what shouldn't come in, you've won some, you've lost some. But when you start speaking to the jury and the trial begins, you just show it to them so much that they see it doesn't really bother Mr. Tompkins. So why should it overwhelm us?
From Lady B here, Dr. Raj, to you, stabbing another person is pure evil. Any crime you commit against a person is generally an evil act. But Raj, what about they always say stabbings are more personal, but beyond that, like psychologically, I don't know what's wrong with me, because if I'm being completely transparent, I think I was more concerned about I probably should not say, I say things that I'm thinking out loud. I probably shouldn't say what I'm about to say, but I was watching the LA fires, and I have family there. Obviously I'm thinking about them. Then I saw these horses and pets, and I'm an animal lover, and I felt absolutely helpless, and they're helpless. But I come full circle. I couldn't hurt an animal. A person, maybe a different story. But what about the fact that when someone takes it to the level of stabbing someone, and in such a vicious and violent way? Number one, as we learned from Brian Kohberger's case, not easy to do. I mean, it's an exhausting practice, but it's incredibly personal, Raj.
right at the core of it, it's personal and it's sending the message, we can get it done. We got it done. And even if we have to do something evil, even if we have to do something tough, we're going to do it. We're going to get it done. And I would say he probably in that crowd, this is not the first time they've killed something with a knife, maybe the first time they've killed a person, but their culture is full of killing animals and things like that for food or whatever. So it's just we had a job to do. This is what we could use. We didn't have artillery. We didn't have poison. But we had a stun gun because that was available, and knives. Hey, we go to our kitchen utensils, pick out a good knife, and then just hack away at you.
We'll get into a little bit more of the details, but this guy Paul Grice is the one that Cora Twombly, the other defendant, says stabbed Veronica. He was trying to, I think, basically contain her and bring her somewhere else, but she fought back, and you did hear about those defensive wounds, and that's when apparently he started just stabbing her. We've got Aysegul Aksu from Turkey, as in the country. I'm here from the beginning. I don't have to watch it 2 times speed to catch you. She just completed her application for forensic psychology. You'll get accepted. Just wanted to share. Even my husband is not very excited. He should be excited about it. Raj is excited about it. Forensic psychology is very interesting.
We need more. I'm glad that she's getting an education in a field where there's a need. And one of the things people don't get is when you get more people that can investigate in some way, it causes other people to think twice before doing something, realizing, oh God, they're up to staff and they've got the technology now. Ooh, we better watch what we're doing. And sometimes that'll cause people not to go through it.
Yeah. Julie Frew, she is literally the all-star of all-stars, the MVP of the mods. Not to rank them, they're all equally important, but Julie definitely goes above and beyond. She started the membership 19 months ago. Before memberships, woohoo, could not do a lot of what we do without Julie Frew and the mods. Of course, COE, Space Coast, Meave Moen, booking producer extraordinaire. This question from Brooke and Janet, I'm going to read it, but I'm going to save the answer. Raj is going to answer this for us in a little bit. We got an indication from Cora Twombly, one of the defendants, but what motivated Grandma's killer helpers? We'll get to that in a second. But Dr. Samarosing, back to you. Jilian Kelley now. So the first autopsy report pertained to Veronica Butler. Jilian Kelley, who was about 10 years older, the wife of a pastor with young children herself. Her cause of death, the same thing, multiple sharp force trauma, 16 sharp force injuries, 9 stab wounds, 7 deep cuts, 2 defensive wounds identified as opposed to 10 for Veronica. So it seems like she was either caught a little more off guard or just couldn't fight back in the same way. In addition, additional trauma here. She had a devastating upper cervical spinal cord injury, which likely caused rapid death. It resulted in immediate paralysis and an inability to breathe independently. Stun gun marks here too. And they say that she was likely dead long before she was placed in a freezer, like 6 to 8 feet underground where she was found. But this is particularly depraved, particularly cruel, Dr. Michaela. We're talking not only the stab wounds, but a upper cervical spinal cord injury resulting in paralysis. Any thoughts on how that may have been delivered, like how they carried that out?
I mean, it's very possible that she was like either held down or was trying to get away and to turn and was stabbed and cut. I mean, there were several people there. And of course, I mean, obviously the second person that was just coming along, we know, to assist was the collateral damage per se. But just, I mean, like you see in the Brian Koberger case, that doesn't matter. They are a part. Those are the people who are there, even though they're innocent per se too. They're just as much of a part of the badness if you will, of the intended targets. And that's what you saw with like Maddie Mogan in the Koberger case. I mean, she was most likely the intended target, and then Kaylee Goncalves and the others there were just, I mean, you can't leave any witnesses, and you can't, yeah. So, but it was very, very likely a very quick process to just get that done.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
we've seen that many times because we've worked a lot of murder cases and rapes and murders. I mean, over the years, and it's a very common thing with the stabbings.
John, by the way, just back to what you were saying earlier, is each case different in terms of the limited amount of, let's say, autopsy photos or graphic images? Does the judge decide on that? And before you answer, Jody Arrington here, $20 super chat. Much gratitude to STS and Best Guests for the important coverage of these important cases. Thank you. John, what about that? Does each judge decide upon that separately?
Yes, I mean, there's case law, so there's guidance for any judge, both from the United States Supreme Court and from the state courts out there in Oklahoma. But the judge makes a discretionary call on what's fair and what's too much. And then you get into the question of separate trials. It might be, if there's somebody who didn't participate directly in the killings, but more in the planning, that would be part of their basis to separate their trial out, because there shouldn't be any bloody photos in their part of the trial. So there are a lot of different questions. Ultimately, the judge decides all those questions. Yes.
Dr. Raj, to you. So this group is the so-called God's Misfits. That's kind of the sensational headline. I called them on the thumbnail God's Devils because it seems a little bit more accurate. But just for people who don't know, the God's Misfits is a Christian prayer group that opposes the government. They're sovereign citizens. The members of the group, these members were charged with, again, 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder. Raj, how do they equate being a Christian prayer group with murder? I mean, how do you qualify that if you're a quote-unquote religious Christian?
Well, one of the thing I connect to there, Joel, is how did the Germans kill the Jews? And they did some studies where they brought people out and said, here's this button, and if you push it, it's going to really tear up the person you push it again. And they ragged on them, and all of them pushed the button. It's 1 is pressure, 2 is loyalty, and 3 is a demented idea of quote unquote the truth. We look at Christianity and we say, well, if it's Christian, they can't do it. Right. But it doesn't mean that someone with a unhealthy mind is going to read it the same way that the average person would read it. And so those fringe people attract each other. They feel left out or on the fringe, and being part of a group empowers them. And that's why they're drawn to that. And if somebody says, well, this is what the word says, and the other says, yeah, that's exactly what it says. Well, now they're part of a powerful connection.
Yeah.
And then,
Paul Grice, by the way, said, and he's the 5th person to be arrested, the last, said that we're going to get into the details, but just to give you a little teaser about that, he said that he was brainwashed, and we're going to ask Raj about that, which of course now they're all pointing the fingers. These are the 2 victims gone way too soon, Jilian Kelley, and then you see Veronica Butler. Veronica Butler, I believe, was 27, 28. Jilian Kelley around 37. It was Veronica's children that they were going to visit, but Jilian has children of her own. Again, her husband was a pastor in the local church there on the border in Kansas, and they never made it home after March 30th. So, John, back to you. Tiffany Adams, kind of early on, and then we'll get to the more recent testimony, according to Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation affidavit, and I quote here, after her arrest on April 13th, 2024, this is Granny Adams, during a custodial interview, she made statements to law enforcement indicating she was responsible for the deaths of Butler and Kelley. This is according to Lieutenant Amy Gates. The new affidavit also confirmed that Butler and Kelley's bodies were found on a property that was leased by Granny's boyfriend, this guy, Tad Callum, according to this affidavit, and that Tad had bought 5 stun guns a few days before the women went missing. But what's interesting, John, I wonder if you have any insight, is it appears that she confessed early on. We're going to get again into the motive in a moment because that's revealed also. But are you surprised by that a woman who had this kind of premeditated intent would then sit there with the OSBI and just spill the beans?
Well, that's actually a sign of legal mental disease or defect, what's kind of layman's term, legal insanity. Used to be called the insanity defense. And that's when you don't know the wrongfulness of your act. And that can manifest in these religious affiliations. They're independent religious affiliations. Clearly no church has adopted this religious group of misfits. And they can begin to believe that, for instance, and this is a hypothetical that relates to this situation, these 2 women are preventing the young children from taking the path to God. They're going to condemn them to hell. And so these 2 women have to be taken out of the way of these children's path to God. And so I am doing a greater good by getting rid of these 2 women and allowing the children a path to God. A person like that thinks they are achieving a greater good. I mean, we've been talking about good and evil. Nietzsche, when he was talking about good and evil, said those who fight monsters need to watch out and guard against becoming monsters themselves, people doing monstrous acts in the name of good. That is what relates to criminal insanity, not understanding the wrongfulness. And one of the hallmarks is you tell the police. I absolutely did that to help those little girls or to get them closer to God. Or I was doing something good. I wasn't doing something bad.
That's very interesting. This is a great comment. Dr. Roger Rhodes from Sam M. Paul stabbed Jilian a second time when he was on the trailer with the women because her eyes started fluttering. He thought she was still alive, so he did not want her to suffer. How do you square that, Raj? So he's sitting here and he murders her.
Wait a minute, Joel. When you're in a bind as a little kid and they ask you, did you steal the candy? Do you say, oh yeah, I did. I'm sorry. That was bad. No, you lie. You make up crap. This is just a older, higher version of kids lying. It's just adults lying.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Raj, can you believe this? Can you believe this dude on the upper left corner is 12 years younger than me or 11 years younger than me? I have a hard time believing this.
Wait a minute. If you were part of a fringe religious group,
you
living
age,
in the boonies, Joel,
you age in dog years.
You probably would look like that.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, you got to put it in environment. Do you think that any of this crowd stands out in the area they live in? And I'm going to tell you right now, no, they don't. Yeah, everybody has a vibe to their environment, that how they live, who they live around, what they eat, what kind of sun they get will make you into the person.
Yeah, look at Granny Adams. She's younger than me too. Wow. I don't know if I should feel good or really bad. I'm not sure which. Jennifer Hawk, you can't even explain that they're Christians. Give me a break. They're pure evil. I tend to agree with you as well. And Phil Waters always talks about the purity of evil. By the way, I've got Phil and Scott coming on tomorrow. I've been debating what to do, but what I think I want to do, and let me know in the chat if you agree with it. I love your input. I pulled a ton of clips of John and Patsy Ramsey and also the son, the police interviews. If anyone has the police interviews, like the full John, Patsy, and Burke police interviews, please send them to us, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com. But it appears that they've been scrubbed. So I was just going to kind of do a walk down Jean Benet memory lane and get Phil and Scott's take, as well as your guys' take and have an opportunity to ask some questions, including how to investigate a case that's as cold as that one. Let me know if that's something you guys are interested in for tomorrow. I already made the thumbnail, so the chances of me changing it are next to zero at this point. Let's get these. Go ahead, Raj.
The other doc is just dying to
Yeah.
say something, and I'm dying to hear what she has to say.
Go ahead, Mikhail. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. There are, thank you. I appreciate that. There were several things. One, on that guy, because I also live out kind of in the boonies too. I mean, we have land in Guyman that we own, and if you don't look like that, you do stand out.
Hey, yeah,
So-
right.
so
I
you're-
grew up where you're talking about. I mean, I
Yeah.
understand Okie, and that what we just saw was
Looks
a
like it. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I would call that a lineup of fringe Okie right
Yeah.
there. That's what we saw.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, and there's that, but also I think it's interesting too that you say, well, how can you rectify, like, how can you resolve the fact that there are Christians going out, like a Christian organization going out and killing people? And I think there's a lot about almost all religion that we really overlook. I mean, the Torah, the Quran, the Bible is full of murders and mass murders with the Great Flood and baby killing and killing because you're working on a Sunday, killing for wearing garments made of two different types of clothing, being allowed to sell your kids into slavery. And I think there's a lot with all of the major religions that's actually very violent that we just kind of don't really think about too much. But because there is all that violence, you're really not doing anything differently than what your religious texts really teach a lot of too, in addition to the love your neighbor as yourself and stuff. But also, since they are sovereign citizens, they don't care. I mean, even if it is wrong, even if they think that the police could catch them, they don't care because in their minds, they don't answer to anybody but themselves. And I've had friends who consider themselves to be sovereign citizens, and even when I interact with them, I have to be kind of on guard because I never quite know what they're going to do or how they're going to act, and I have to be like, all right, let's not do anything illegal today because there are still police out here. So,
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you've got to. You're talking about a group of people that, when they talk about Christian, that group of Christian, they're majoring on minor things. You know, the killing and all that in the Bible. That's very minor, and so major faith that where people operate, they don't. That's a minor issue. They don't ignore it. They just put it on a lower level.
Mm.
And
Well,
love your
if I-
neighbor. That's a bigger issue.
John, hop in there.
they're
Yeah,
calling
John.
themselves Christians.
Yeah.
That it's their definition of Christian. It is, so don't try to
Yeah,
explain it
yeah.
with the normal definition of Christian.
Yeah,
But,
let him- and
Yeah, sorry, I'm to jump in here.
as
Robert
far as
has
normal. See, there's regular and there's irregular, and this crowd is irregular.
Robert, tell us. You said Joel and the crew. We got breaking news according to Joel's pal at Court TV, Vinny Politan. Just learned that the death penalty could be announced in the case. Which case are we talking about in Washington, D.C.? That's my question. Are they religious or is the name a joke? They are religious. Raj, I asked you about the stab wounds. A lot of people
Right.
are asking about the stun gun. What do you? They're both found with stun gun marks that are difficult to look at after the fact. But what do you make of the use of a stun gun psychologically? It sounds like they wanted to incapacitate them. Is that because they had some sort of conscience?
No,
And didn't
no,
wanna-
those are all tools available, affordable, and usable. Okay, and so they wanted to beef up their move as much as they could, and so they thought the stun gun would give them an edge, and that's all they were looking for, an edge. And at the mind that is out of bounds is they were there to get the job done. They had a job, and they were getting the job done, and they were told by the leaders, "Here's the job, and we wouldn't ask you to do it if we hadn't been led. Oh, I love this language. We were led to let you know to do this. Well, see, it sounds spiritual. Oh my God, a greater power has led this. And you know, that kind of language, that kind of mindset makes what they're doing in their head okay. And that's an element of sociopathy. People have that no conscience. They're adapting. What do I have to do to be part of the crowd? That look at the crowd, look at those pictures. Isn't it interesting how similar they look?
Yeah. By the way, I got a hate mail last night saying I can't stand that you go off on tangents. So I was going to comment because usually at 2:30 in the morning, I want to comment in the most vile way possible. But the COE usually talks me down from that. But we are the only true crime podcast where you will get glowing skin tips as well. We cover a lot of facets here, and I was shocked to learn. Beach Bum says I use Vaseline as a moisturizer. The COE told me that her own grandmother, her beloved grandmother, that was her trick. She used Vaseline. I think the COE might do that. But then, look, Space Coast is here on the West Coast. Hope you're doing well, Spacey. I just texted you and the fam. I hope you're doing well. But my point is, Sandy, the COE's mother, works in the skincare field, and she told me the number one anti-aging trick is moisturizing. And I see a lot of people saying sunscreen. This brings me full circle to what I told Roger Rhodes. This is a plug that they're not paying me for. On Netflix, watch the documentary Don't Die. It's about trying to reverse the aging process. It's a guy with $400 million who is trying to live forever, and he looks insane.
And the bottom line of there is that guy's got more money than sense, and he'll lose his money before he loses his life. And
or he's going to get hit by a postal truck, one or the other. Okay, so back to this case,
because he feels because of what he's doing, he feels like he's 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And boy, that's a dangerous mindset.
Hold on, what does this mean? No water? I thought you're supposed to hydrate. Aren't I supposed to hydrate? Anyway, go ahead. Back to John. Let me rein this in real quick. John, people listening are like, what the hell is this? John, to you, just back to the fact that Granny Adams, Michaela talked about this, but that Granny Adams waives this preliminary hearing and her right to a speedy trial. Again, is that that's more in your eyes a legal strategy than any kind of omission or try or attempt to get a plea deal?
Probably a couple things. One, the initial hearing, so that preliminary hearing where the state has to prove that they have probable cause to go forward with the charge, that's a whole lot of bad information getting out into the public and to the prospective jurors. They get to put on a one-sided show to establish probable cause. So keeping that out of the public for now is a good thing. And second, if their strategy is to win the penalty phase. Remember, this is a two-phase trial. There's the guilt phase where if they're found guilty, then you go on to the death penalty phase, the penalty phase. They want to try to maintain some ability to show empathy or sorrow for her and her situation. And so keeping those gruesome facts out as much as possible is to their advantage in terms of putting off the bad information about their client, if this is just a legal strategy.
Raj, I'm going to need therapy because Canine Catherine here, she says, I watch a podcast of two dermatologists. They say Vaseline is the best lip moisturizer, but I'm going to need therapy because I was sure Canine only watched this podcast. And I'm a narcissist. Look at Carm, my mother chiming in. The Lori Vallow case is also, by the way, every third day I basically threatened to quit because it is a lot. And I was basically venting to Carm, and she told me to shut the you-know-what up. But anyway, here she is in the chat. The Lori Vallow case is also a distortion of religion, 100%. She thought
and I would say to your mom, that hasn't she noticed that there's a certain group of people that are good for the distortion. And we think it's very small, but there is a large lunatic fringe out there. And these kind of cases bring it out. And Lori's, the one she talked about, there's another great case of, she didn't do this in a vacuum. She did this out in the open. These people basically did it out in the open. Yeah. And they just think they're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And I can dictate reality is their mindset. And that is scary. That is very scary.
By the way, under the banner of TMI, Carm did have her colonoscopy this week. I put some of it up on, not the actual colonoscopy, but the reaction on Instagram. She's 100% clean as a whistle and is advising everybody to do it. She said, I asked Carm, I said, at 85, do they ask you to come? They always say come back in 5 years. At 85, do they ask you to come back in 5 years? She said, you're not even supposed to have it after 80. Carm says she's never doing it again. But then she called today and told me that, you used to have to drink here we go again. I'm going to get so much hate mail tonight. You used to have to drink basically like this metallic liquid. It tasted like you're drinking a soda can that was melted. And I couldn't do it. But now you get like just the regular Miralax. So Carm says she might go for it in 5 years. Carm probably has another 30 colonoscopies left. That's an interesting way, Raj, to figure out your age or your lifespan is by colonoscopies every 5 years. But anyway, I digress. So back to
you really got one there. Woo, buddy. John, you're getting a beating for that tangent.
So Paul, here's the autopsy findings. Again, just so you see the actual document, cluster of 9 sharp force injuries, 7 stab wounds, 2 incised wounds. It goes on. And you see the cervical, spine, and spinal cord stuff. COE just wants you to know that she did her homework, even though she missed this part of the show. So there you go. But John Tompkins, to you, Paul Grice, who's this dude on the right, the far right. He's sort of like the innocent doughboy looking putsy guy of the group, but his name is Paul Jeremiah Grice. Now, he testified at this preliminary hearing, which happened last month. He testified for the prosecution and said that he made a deal to avoid the death penalty and also to help the victims' families. John, is that just a lawyer telling him what to say, or do you believe he believes that?
Well, I think he probably believes that. I think it's a combination of the two. I don't know which is his primary motivation. In avoiding the death penalty, you're accepting, in most cases, the rest of your life in prison. So in terms of a better outcome, that's debatable. Some people don't want to spend the next 30 or 40 years in prison. We just had a recent case in Indiana where a man waived his death penalty appeals and told his attorneys and the courts hearing the appeals that he didn't want them to file any more appeals, and he was executed. But to get back to him, my bigger question is, why did the state, knowing that he committed one of the killings, he's one of the people who actually inflicted the wounds, these heinous wounds that you see from the autopsy, why does he get a deal? And I give that a lot of weight because his genuine desire to repent, and I am throwing out a religious term, I know, but his genuine desire to appease the family and give them something to help them grieve and get through this had to have been taken as legitimate by the prosecutors, or I don't think they would have given him the deal and allowed him to say those things.
Yeah. By the way, John, do you find that a lot of your, I guess, more violent criminal clients / defendants, do you find that they often turn to God if they're not already there when they commit the crime?
Later in the process, usually not at the trial phase. I have most of my contact leading up to trial, and no, not really. They don't turn to God during that phase, and the phase that I'm working with them closely and on an almost daily basis. When they have more time to reflect, sometimes honestly, and sometimes as a facade, they say that they've accepted God into their lives. You know, there's an interesting statistic on this topic, not on this case. This is about 10 years old, and I believe it's a DOJ statistic. It might be an Indiana statistic, but groups that have religious affiliation and kill because of it are a little more than 2 times more likely to describe themselves as Christian than satanic.
That's interesting.
It's
But let's
like,
keep in mind, though, that
Yeah.
with these religions, I don't feel like it's a small part of almost any religion. I mean, so let's just take like Christianity or Islam or any of it. I mean, if you look back, I mean, from the years of crusades and killings, I mean, like I've been to Peru and I used to live in Europe, and I've been to Turkey and like all over the place. And I mean, Christianity, as one example, I'm not picking on Christianity, but as one example, was spread through violence. It wasn't here that we're going to come and embrace it. It's you either embrace it and believe this, or we're killing you. And the settlers, the white settlers, of which my ancestors are from the Europe area, and I mean, came over as missionaries and forced the religion upon the Native Americans and stuff too. A lot of them did, and it's got its roots with a lot of the religions, and Islam too, Judaism too, in the Crusades, in the Salem witch trials, in the Inquisition, fatwas, honor killings. You know, I mean the list. You know, tearing down the LGBT community like it's being used to do now. Religion is being used in a violent way to hurt the LGBT community right now, and it's become a nationwide epidemic. And I think there's a lot more violence involved as a part of its culture for a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people, than we really give credit for.
Yeah,
Well-
that's really interesting. Go ahead, Raj. Was that you?
Yeah,
It-
no,
it-
I think John was going to say something.
Yeah, I think it's really important to stress. I haven't seen anything where this group of 5 are saying our religion caused us to do this. I gave a hypothetical earlier. They committed a heinous crime and they're in this odd outlier Bible study group that I'm pretty sure didn't go to the Southern Baptist Convention and get some training in how to do real religious Bible study. Okay.
Right.
So they're an outlier group that looks at the Bible, but that wasn't their motive. They were in a custody battle. That's what it is. And
Yeah.
and so in a way to say, well, they were affiliated as, or they self-identified as Christians. Well, what if they'd self-identified as, pick any ethnic or religious group? That's not what's driving this behavior. Now, unfortunately, their Christian beliefs didn't stop this behavior. That's what the Christian system is supposed to be there to do. Go talk to your pastor or your priest when you have these feelings of anger and rage, and he'll help you get through it. Well, that clearly wasn't going on in their Bible study. But their Bible study and their religious affiliation wasn't driving these murders either.
Yeah, that's a great point. For sure. Raj, to you. So at this preliminary hearing, and I'll quote it now. This is Paul Grice, the baby-faced defendant of the group. He says, and I quote, "They deserve the closure. They deserve the honesty," Grice said. He testified that he participated in the killings because he had been, quote unquote, brainwashed by evil. And he said he is haunted by what he did every day and every night. And let me just continue here. And he said that the children's grandmother, Tiffany with 1F Adams, recruited him to do the killing by quoting Bible verses. He recalled she laughed after Veronica, Butler, and another woman were ambushed March 30th in Oklahoma, and said that the laughter when they were killing these women, it was the most evil laugh I've ever heard. I mean, Raj, I don't know how to ask this nicely, but how can you be such a wuss as to have this woman, 53 years old, as a 35-year-old man, read Bible verses to you and convince you to go and kill 2 women? I mean, how does that add up?
The start is the person reading it has already had to been able to convince themselves. That's the start of it. So you've got a convinced person talking to a person who's wavering or ill-equipped to handle it. And so what they bring to the party is a sense of authority. And with that authority, they say, I've been led to believe that this is the work, this is what's been done, and this is how you handle it.
Well, and if you ever look at that documentary called Ordinary Men about the Nazi and the police in the brown shirts in Germany and Poland and stuff, it was kind of the same thing like you're talking about. I mean, that you have people who, when under the right circumstances, never would have done this. Like, I mean, they were just ordinary people. I mean, they were, plumbers or just fixing cars and this stuff. And then you bring them into this situation and you put that pressure from an authority person, like you were just saying. I mean, people who perhaps never would have done this before, they end up doing it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And leaders seek out followers, and they have a vibe to that. Leaders can go into a room and pick out, here's a follower, here's a follower, here's a follower. That by saying certain things, it allows them to eliminate people. Oh, that person is not influenceable, and this person is. And when I hear, Joel, you talk about what he said, it just reminds me of a conversation of caught. What do you do? What do you say? What do you do when you're caught?
Yeah.
Are you able? And I would say he has there. If you looked at this guy's history, I bet there are many times he's been caught doing many cruddy things. Not this cruddy, but other cruddy things. And so he has a history of, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why I'm sorry. And I'm sure that was already in his brain before he was arrested.
Yeah. Raj, back to you. So this comment actually reminds me of my father, because my father read this. My father's no longer here, which I still can't believe. And he was a psychiatrist, and I'm trying to write a book about his kind of philosophy of psychiatry. But he would have, I know my dad well enough to know that if he read this, he would have chuckled, because my dad was really a believer in free choice. And so, like, I used to say to my dad, which I say to COE now every other day, I'm having a nervous breakdown, right? And my dad would be like, there's no such thing. He would laugh at me. And I'd be like, what do you mean there's no such thing? But, he would always like qualify, and Carm could explain this better, that life is basically a series of choices, and you're choosing to maybe think you're having a breakdown, or you're choosing to think you're brainwashed. Or is my dad totally wrong? Like, did this guy actually get brainwashed? And what does that really, really mean?
What it means is he knows excuses. He knows the crowd he's talking to. And he's not coming up with, psychic theory 478 on the outskirts. No, these clowns wouldn't have ever got that. No, he's an Okie, talked to a bunch of Okie or Kansan people. Okay. And he knows if a person's caught in their culture, what do you say to help you get a better outcome? This is it's not brainwash, it's learned behavior. It's what you're seeing with this guy. He learned how to do it.
Go ahead, Michaela.
I think there's a lot less free will and free choice than we've always been taught. I mean, yes, I think that science backs some free will and free choice, but I believe from all my studies, and I was in school for, 10 or 12 years, post-high, like in college and that school stuff, I believe that between genetics and the way that you're raised, at least 90 to 95% of the stuff that we do every day is the way that we were made genetically and raised to be. And that even when people do really good stuff, a lot of it, I'm not saying everything, but a lot of it is because that they're doing what they were made and brought up to be in the first place.
Well, and all I want to say to that is people are attracted to lazy and easy. that is the nature of human
I would
beings.
agree with you with that. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
you know,
Raj, there's a comment here, and I don't know where it
Yeah.
went, but and I
Okay.
did not know this, but basically saying that Paul Grice, according to this person, that his father was apparently very abusive and was a preacher, and she believes that that played a role,
Yeah.
physically abusive, I assume, and that played a role in his kind of inability to defend himself morally and say, "I'm not going to do this." What do you make of that?
Great excuse.
It's
That's what
funny.
I think of it.
That's
I
what my
think
dad would say.
that everybody, have you ever noticed, Joel, how great people are at making excuses for crappy decisions?
Yeah.
The crappier the decision, the greater the excuse. This is learned behavior, and one of the things is I do believe that in the power of choice and that people have choice. I think that it is easy to minimize the influence of easy and lazy. It's easy to make that sound noble, and it is not noble. It is just something that people slide into.
Black Widow, our friend in the Republic of Ireland, Roger, maximum effect, minimum effort is my motto. There you go, Black Widow. By the way, Ned Smith just said you need a brain to be brainwashed. Ned Smith is somehow watching his podcast and listening. I never even heard of it. Lunatic Fringe. I think it must be a band, and it's so weird.
It was a song by I believe the band was Canadian.
Oh, really?
That was the name of one of their songs. The Lunatic, back in the 60s, early 70s, Lunatic Fringe.
I mean, I love this community with all my heart, but I have this picture of Ned Smith with like a bun and like a sewing needle, a knitting needle in her hair, and here she is listening to Lunatic Fringe. So I learned something new every day. One of these days, I'll have Ned de-anonymize herself. Look at her, Lunatic Fringe. She's screaming. I guess I've got the wrong image of Ned Smith, but it's kind of funny and interesting that way. So back to John here. John, Cora Twombly, who's this woman. Let me just get rid of this comment. So Cora is top middle there. She looks very happy. She cut a deal, John Tompkins, and in testimony in open court, Cora Twombly said that Granny Tiffany Adams, lower left, who does not use Aquaphor, Vaseline, or any other moisturizer in the Oklahoma sun, said that she testified that Granny Adams told her that she had run out of money. This is the motive, I believe, to continue the court fight. Apparently, she was very wealthy. That was the word I remember when this story first happened. She owned a lot of land, but apparently she did run out of money. Adams also thought that Veronica Butler's brother, the kid's uncle, was S-ing, abusing the children. Very interesting. I mean, this is an open court. So what happens now, John, with that testimony, assuming 3 of these 5 go to trial? Right now, it looks like the 2 on the right, Cora at the top and Paul Grice all the way at the right are not, they're just cutting deals. But the other 3, what does this kind of testimony mean for them if they go to trial?
You mean the ones who aren't cutting deals if they go to trial?
Correct. Yeah, the other 3. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it does mean, first of all, how believable is that testimony? So the defense attorneys are going to start investigating what's being said. They have access to their clients. They can test the veracity of the flips statements. Is this documented anywhere else? Do the bank records show money running out, things like that? And you can test that. It provides motive. I mean, that woman's testimony provides motive. And even though a prosecutor is not required to prove motive to prove any crime in any state, that's a common misconception. It really helps if you have a complete narrative for the jury in saying why. But you don't have to answer the question why. all prosecutors know if they can answer the question why, and it gets back to what I said before, this isn't a religious crime. This is a custody battle. She wanted to end it. That sort of tidies up the picture and takes out the distraction. So the defense can't come in and say there's this greater good motive of religion and saving the kids from condemnation in a very religious setting where you're going to pick the jury. That could ring with jurors. That could beat the death penalty. But if the state can come in and say, no, she was just mad about the custody issue. She was trying to get custody straightened out for her drug addicted son. That takes a quiver out of one defense narrative.
Interesting. I never understand how lawyers vet all this, but somehow they do it with multiple clients. So it seems like it is a ton of work. Lee T here, her cat is fascinated by Dr. Raj's laugh.
That's an awesome cat. I'm going to tell you right now.
Michaela, what's your cat's name?
You know,
Man,
Michaela, what's your cat's
We've
name?
got 7 cats and 1 dog here on our farm because we live kind of out in the boonies. I mean, we're not that far away from Guyman where we live. So we've got 7 cats. We've got Oreo, we have Cheerio, we have God and Goddess,
Oh, wow.
and we have Daisy, and Quaker's just passed away a month and a half ago. And then we have Moo and Cirrus the cat, and then Cody the dog.
and
Wow.
I have a dog named Marisi Cup.
Oh, nice.
John, any pets, John?
I've got Lewis, Bob, and Henry, all dogs.
There we go.
What breed? What breed?
See the cats.
I've got a Frenchie and 2 mutts.
Nice.
Oh,
I've got a Fred and Ethel at home. So there we go. We've all got pets. There we go.
There we go. There's some. Al, have you noticed the similarities in everybody, the host and the guest and pet?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I make a comment about the
deeper
two?
meaning there, Joel? There's a deeper meaning.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Just the context of the 2 snitches and kind of what I'm sensing and how they're being perceived. So you've got the female who's snitching, and she's not saying I want to try to help the families get through this. She's just saying, hey, I'll give you the motive, and that's useful, and I want my better deal. And that's sort of not getting a lot of criticism, but the man comes forward and says, I'm trying to help these families. I want to come clean and let them know what was really going on, and I feel awful and I feel guilty, and I want to make up for that, and I want my deal. And he's getting a lot of grief for that. It is interesting to me, and the thing that we don't know about Grice or the other flip, what's their IQ? Okay, because we're getting into this brainwashing idea that Grice says. And if he's got an IQ of 72, I tend to give a lot more weight to him being susceptible to brainwashing than I do if he's got an IQ of 180. Free will and
wait a minute, John, wait a minute. Do you believe anybody in this crowd is in the 100 above?
No. And
No.
Oklahoma.
No,
and let me mention
I'm
this
not.
too.
I'm just saying. Listen, I'm just saying. So when it gets to susceptibility to suggestion,
Yeah.
so
I agree.
right. So when he was, if somebody's got an IQ and operates like a 12-year-old, then think about how easy it is for a parent to get a 12-year-old to do what they're told to do, or an 8-year-old to do what they're told to do, and that's how easy it is to get this grown up to do what he's told to
I mean,
do.
that's fascinating. So would you actually give these guys IQ tests, John?
I would.
You would.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
And
I
keep
always
in
learn
mind
something.
too that in the USA, in states like Oklahoma, the average IQ is about 3 to 4 points lower than the national average.
Say that again, that last part. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
Oh yeah, I've researched this. Our IQ average here, it's not just that we're less educated in the South and the Midwest, because the lack of education has a lot to do with it too. We are the average population is about 3 to 4 points of IQ lower than other parts, than the highest parts of the USA. And as a country, we are far behind Japan, South Korea, and China, which are the top 3. in terms of the IQs of the global IQ. So we're not the best and the brightest, especially in Oklahoma. I'm just gonna say it, and I can say that because I was born here, and unfortunately, I still live here. I want to move to Vermont or Oregon,
but you throw in, and I thought this was interesting, an interesting fact about Grice, and this isn't a defense. It's something lawyers call something that explains but does not justify the crime.
diminished capacity.
But if you're being raised by a father who every time you do something he doesn't like, punches you in the nose, pretty soon you're not going to do anything until he tells you what's okay to do.
Right.
And as you grow up, do you ever grow out of that? Or do you always look to somebody to tell you what to do, so you have no initiative and you really don't have as much free will as someone who didn't experience that?
Well, on the stage of moral reasoning is likely not at a 4 or 5. I mean, let alone a 2 or 3. Like, you know, that.
But that's not a defense.
Yeah.
That is not a defense.
No, it's not a defense, but it gives some perspective with some sort of diminished capacity, I think. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Which is why the prosecutor, if he believes that and knows those things, may be saying we're willing to give him this deal, even though he performed one of the worst acts of the group.
Right. I agree.
In Switzerland, a country that my grandmother called home after World War II, we called them Hinterwalder, like behind in the woods. We're talking about, hillbillies, I guess is another way to say it in America. COE, I got bad news for you after listening to this last exchange. Number one, we have 3 human children. I need 1 more dog. Carm, if you're listening, it's going to happen eventually. Number 2, we're moving to Oklahoma so I can feel smarter.
Yes.
I walk around feeling.
I don't care what's being said. Let me tell you, Okies, standard test and Okies don't match.
No, they don't.
If you tested Okies for Okieism, I believe they would score high.
By the way, I love Vermont. Vermont is one of my favorite states. Neither here nor there, but Michaela said that.
Love to move to Vermont. If anybody, I would love to move there, or Oregon, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Washington State. Would love it, especially with what's coming out with the LGBT community once Donald Trump takes office. So.
Well, that's a whole other conversation. So just moving it along here, and we're going to wrap it up in a few minutes. I'm not sure if it's my fault. I guess it is my fault that we cover the craziest things while doing a story. It happens often. I probably will get a deluge of hate mail. Luckily, I'm too tired tonight, so I'll just fall asleep before I read it. Plan 1, John Tompkins. So there were 2 different plans here, according to this testimony from Cora Twombly, the other person who's cut a deal. The first plan was, according to her, to throw a metal vise through a windshield of Veronica Butler's car on a country road so it would look like an accident. And that, listen to this, Granny Adams specifically chose Veronica Butler's birthday, which is February 28th. That was the day she wanted to end her life. But Butler ended up not traveling out of Hugoton, Kansas, where she lived. Again, if this goes to trial and this testimony is admitted into evidence, I mean, this is really damning, especially if and it could become a death penalty case. I mean, she was targeting her birthday to murder her. There's zero humanity in that. There's no turning back from that, I don't think.
Right. It's bad fact on top of bad fact. They had plenty of evidence that it was premeditated, planned, motivated by not any kind of misguided good, but pure bad thoughts, and just because of child custody, which there's a well-developed and accessible system to sort those things out, available even in that part of the country. It's also, I just have to comment, when you hear something like that, we were going to throw a metal vise through the windshield to make it look like an accident. Okay, well, maybe you throw a rock through the windshield to make it look like an accident. But when the police find a metal vise in the front seat of a car, nobody thinks accident.
Yeah.
They're not.
By the way,
they're-
three of the nicest people I know, including our very own Dr. Roger Rhodes, Phil Waters, America's most respected homicide detective, and you got Michaela here, all from the great state of Oklahoma. So there are good people in Oklahoma. So let's again, I mean, we are poking fun at the state, but maybe not too much
There's
fun.
a
I don't know.
few. There's
Yeah.
a few of us. I'm not going to vouch for a whole bunch, but there's a few.
I like Michaela's edge.
Wait
There.
a
I
minute,
love
wait a
it.
minute. Sooner born and sooner bred, and when I die, I'll be sooner dead. That's
Yeah.
me.
I'll be dead in Vermont. So
Hey,
Raj, here's a question for you. Then I'm going to go over plan 2, and then we're going to get final thoughts and call
Okay.
it a night. Does Grandma Tiffany with 1F have remorse, do you believe, now that she's in jail?
Well, real quick, Joel. Not
Hmm.
only no, but hell no. No, she's not remorseful. She's proud. I guarantee you. All her crowd praise her this day. All her crowd praises her for what she did.
Unreal.
Oh,
Michaela, plan 2 here, according to Cora Twombly's testimony, was to lure Granny Adams wanted to lure Veronica and Jilian into a horse trailer when they picked up when the two of them were picking up the boy and the girl, who are the children, obviously, of Veronica Butler. In the testimony, sworn testimony, she said, and I quote, somebody asked, what about the supervisor? Cora Twombly recalled. She said she had done nothing to keep the kids safe either. She said basically it was collateral damage. I think we all had a problem with it, but it was a plan. So she's talking about Jilian Kelley, that she was just simply collateral damage. And then goes on. I mean, this is hard to listen to, so earmuffs for a second. She said, Cora Twombly did in court, that she knew the plan had gone wrong when she saw 2 people at the ambush site running from the trailer. She said, which were Veronica and Jilian, I assume. She said that she then saw Paul Grice struggling on the ground with Veronica Butler. She recalled him saying, I need some help. I need some help. And so she said she gave Granny Adams a stun gun and told Granny Adams to help. She said she later saw Paul Grice on top of Veronica Butler, moving his arms up and down. I believe he was stabbing her, Cora Twombly said. I mean, this is so depraved. This is also, I mean, just like a tragedy of errors, not to be confused with a comedy of errors, where they're trying to unalive this person and they can't. So now they're fishing for a stun gun. And then she looks up. I mean, your thoughts, and I'm more interested, I guess, I assume these other 3 are going to end up in trial and likely a death penalty case. I mean, how do you defend that? I know John's the defense attorney, but how do you defend that in your experience as a private investigator?
well, I mean, to start off with, I think there's going to be a lot of of um, special circumstances that are going to, and I'm anti-death penalty. Like I'm pro-life. I don't believe in that. Even if somebody were to kill me, I still wouldn't want to put to death. But in the state of Oklahoma, with the lack of education and the high amount of religion, as a state we're very pro unalive, and so I think it's going to be easy to sway a jury, especially with the depravity and how brutal the killings were and the special circumstances that they'll bring into it. Now, in terms of defending it, I mean that you're going to have to start poking holes in all of the evidence. I mean, hopefully with time, that's what they're doing, is to push it out. Maybe evidence will disappear. Maybe witnesses won't want to talk. Maybe they can poke holes and get motions eliminated, like motions of them eliminated to help to get stuff excluded, to attack, push. They're going to have a really difficult job, especially with the evidence that they have and with the people testifying against them. So I am betting that if they're offered deals later on at the last second, they would either take them, or if not, then they'll just push it to trial because they have nothing to lose. But they're going to have to start poking holes in everything. I mean, DNA, each piece of evidence. It's going to be a tough job, just like with Brian Koberger. They are trying, but it's going to be really tough.
Apparently, also sometime in October or September back of 2023, Tiffany Adams was heard saying that bodies would fall. So this is, well in advance of when the crime happened, and that's why Violet here says there was substantial premeditation. I saw someone say that the boyfriend waived his speedy trial, so there is likely going to be a trial this spring. Final thing here for John Tompkins, and then we'll get final thoughts. So when the stabbing starts to happen, because he can't do whatever he wanted to do originally, Cora Twombly, after the fact, then destroys the cell phones and just casually covers up the blood with a shovel, and then takes Grandma Tiffany home. Like, I just can't wrap my head. Okay, well, that's done. Let's go home now and, watch TV. But Cole and Cora, she said, were the lookouts on the day of the murders. They confided in their, I believe she was a then 16-year-old daughter, in hopes of receiving an alibi. John Tompkins, how critical a witness is the Twombly's daughter here, who also, I think, opposed at the time what they were doing. I think they tried to maybe convince her to either help, cover up the crime or something, and she said no way. How hard does the government lean on her, and how critical a witness can she be?
Well, they don't have to lean on her. She came to them and told them what she knew about what had happened. And so in that sense, they don't have to lean on her. In terms of making the case, they may have some need to put her on, but generally speaking, receiving the tip starts the investigation that finds the evidence, and it's the evidence that you have to get in. So the tip doesn't really relate to the admissibility of the evidence, meaning you don't really have to use the tipster in the trial, because you've got the investigation that flowed out of the tip. Now,
look at this. I didn't know this. Thank you. This is why STS Nation, I say best guest, better community. The daughter's not going to be a witness. It's part of Cora's plea deal. Interesting.
Okay. But again, it's unlikely. She wasn't an eyewitness. She heard admissions and confessions to crimes. She didn't have personal knowledge. That's what you need to be a witness to a fact. If they make statements that are inconsistent, maybe she's useful. But in reality, if she gave the information that started the investigation, unless she lied or was trying to falsely accuse her parents, so they were abusing her and she wanted them out of the house, so she went and told the police, my parents committed that awful crime, and they're wrongfully accused. That scenario is not here. So what she told the police that caused them to develop leads, to find their suspects, to get the evidence, they usually don't need to go back that far for admissibility.
This brings us to final thoughts on this sordid case. You can also weigh in on your skincare routine if you care. Dr. Michaela Saramosing, she's the owner of the largest Oklahoma-owned private investigation and process serving company, a licensed process server, very well educated, as you heard, a teacher, a principal, a superintendent. She's licensed to do all those things and is an ardent advocate of civil rights for the oppressed. What kind of moisturizer was that? And your final thoughts here, Michaela?
Yeah, that's what I use. But I'm actually going to switch because I don't like the fact that it says that has cholesterol in it. And I don't really feel comfortable with that. So
there you go.
I'm not going to promote that anymore. But but anyway, but I think this is going to continue to play out and be a very interesting case to watch. I think you're either going to see more plea deals or the prosecutors just keep pursuing the death penalty, and then you're going to see trials. And then if it goes to trial, you're almost surely going to see a conviction. I don't see any of them getting out of this unscathed. I just don't. I do want to say too that it's always a pleasure and a joy to collaborate with such wonderful people from the other two, well, the other three of you, plus all of the listeners and the viewers, and it's always fun to hear you all's perspectives and I mean to hear about your cats and everything too. So
yeah, we like to go off on tangents, even though
Yeah, we
people
do.
hate it and threaten me daily. I'll need security soon, but we love having you, Michaela, as well. John Tompkins, we met him during the Delphi case. Obviously, that's still controversial with Richard Allen never getting to see the light of day again. Some people saying they got the wrong guy. Others say 100% the right guy. The debate continues. But what we know for sure, John Tompkins is a very formidable criminal defense attorney. He was covering that trial for Fox 59 in Indianapolis, where he is a criminal defense attorney. Your final thoughts here, John, and let me ask you, are we going to see the death penalty brought into this case, at least for Grandma Tiffany Adams?
Well, first, I'll digress from...
John, real quick, I'm sorry, before you digress, I think I was so caught up, I did not see what anybody's response was. If you want Jean Benet with Phil and Scott tomorrow, let me know in the comments. Go ahead there, John.
Sure. No, I'm going to talk about skincare. You didn't ask me, so I'll digress.
You probably have the best advice.
Well,
Hear it.
I've always been told that the way to make a small fortune is start with a big fortune and try to look young forever. So I don't do skincare.
Yeah, there you go. That's awesome. As far as death penalty,
definitely. In that state, there's no way around it. And I think at least one of the 5 co-defendants will not be offered any kind of deal to get out of the death penalty, just because of the venue that it is in and the heinousness of the offense. Overall, I think this case is full of very interesting specific facts, very interesting, unique facts to this crime. But at its core, I will just say, having done several dozen murder trials and attempt murder trials, murder is wrapped in one of 4 wrappers. It's love, hate, drugs, money, or serial killer.
That's interesting. I never heard the serial killer one in there. That's interesting. But Detective Phil Waters, he's investigated over 400 homicides. He'll be on tomorrow. He always says it's sex, money, or drugs. And then I guess you got to add serial killer. By the way, for full disclosure, I want to do Jean Benet, and I've obviously followed the case all along, but not the way I know STS Nation people have followed it. So then I will get tons of hate mail saying, well, you should have studied up on the case more before I did it with Phil and Scott. But there are, it's an FBI agent and a homicide detective. So it's more of a me issue, Raj. I got to become immune to the hate mail, Raj, and just do what I do.
You need to be like Frank Sinatra. You did it your way.
There you go.
That's what it's about. Hey, there is a one way and there's a Joel way. And you don't need to do it the other way. You need to do it the Joel way. Yeah. And if people don't like it, turn the channel.
You're the man, Raj. That's why I will be going to you for therapy very, very soon. Or leave. I left Raj a crazy message yesterday because I knew I could.
Wait a minute, Joel. Since everybody's been talking about moisturizing, and I want to get into my mug of what's the best.
What? Hold it up. I see Roger there. What do you drink?
Roger,
coffee?
Wait a minute. Let me go around. Alan. Oh, I'm my best moisturizer.
There you go.
The best for Roger.
Roger Allen Rhodes. That's a great name. RAR. If you don't know Roger Rhodes, now you know. He's a therapist in Greenville, South Carolina, in private practice. He is from the great state of Oklahoma that we poke fun at, but obviously we don't mean all of it, maybe some of it, but not all of it. And Dr. Raj, he works within the prison system too, and is an all-around great guy. And I did leave him an insane message. And I should probably keep more things to myself, which is probably what Carmel told me after the show. But this is true too. Roger Rhodes sounds like a rock band. Raj, I know you're not supposed to diagnose people, but your final thoughts. What is the deal with this crew right here?
Religious psychopaths. That's what they are. The whole crowd.
There you go. And Raj, ending on a serious note here. What advice do you give to these family members? I mean, Jilian's father's husband is a pastor. They come from a very religious community in Kansas. she was the mother, both mothers. Now they're both gone. I mean, if you had to talk to the family, what is the 1 or 2 lines of advice that you give?
Well, the 1 or 2, I wouldn't give them advice. I would ask them what they believe the message is. And that would give me an idea of how they were processing. I believe listening to their background, what the number one idea would be God's will. From there, this was God's will. You may not like it, but that's what it is. And so we will mourn and we will learn and we will move on. And payback is to the justice system, not to us. And they will look to let go and move on.
Well said. Look at this. The nicknames are coming in. Ned Smith, Rocky Roads. I love that one.
That's my nephew's name.
Rocky Roads?
Yeah.
Sorry, I love it. And look at this one, Rhodes Scholar.
Rhodes family.
Rhodes Scholar. I love it. One day I will get to meet the great Roger Rhodes in person, as well as the other guests. But appreciate you all being here. I know we go and do some crazy talk, but I always learn stuff on this show. I find it fascinating. I hope you guys do too. But if you hate it, still watch and still like, subscribe, and join our Patreon page. And we'll see you tomorrow at 12:30 with Bill and Scott. Love you, America. Love you, Oklahoma. Love you, South Carolina. Love you, the great state of Indiana, Larry Bird country. And last but not least, I'm in Florida, but we can't forget the Republic of Ireland, Tanzania, Zambia. We've got people there. It's crazy. The whole world. Let's be kind to each other. We're thinking of the families, including my own family, that is in harm's way or in danger potentially in Los Angeles, the worst fires in the history of the city. And it is tough to watch, and it's supposed to be another rough night. So whatever you do something, whether you donate, say a prayer, wish, whatever it is, do something. I'm on my way to CVS to go get Aquaphor. Love you, America. Guys, stick around.